Everyone assumes that any Xiaomi phone under $100 on Amazon is an automatic steal. But after using the Redmi A5 every day for 10 days, I can tell you it is not that simple. On paper, it looks insane for around $83. A huge 6.88-inch 120Hz display, a 32-megapixel camera, a 5200 mAh battery, Android 15 Go, and a modern flat design. Sounds like budget phone heaven, right? But here is the twist. Depending on your carrier and what you actually do on your phone, the Redmi A5 can either be the best cheap phone you have ever bought, or a frustrating mistake you will want to return. And there is one detail in the Amazon listing that a lot of people miss until it is too late. Before we dive into what I discovered living with this phone, quick heads up. If you are already kind of sold on the Redmi A5 and just want the current price, I will leave the Amazon link below. But stick around, because what I found in real-world use might completely change whether you should click buy or not. So why did I even bother with a sub-$90 phone in 2025? Look, not everyone wants to spend flagship money just to scroll social media, make calls, and watch YouTube. I wanted something I could recommend to family members, to people on a tight budget, or as a backup phone that I would not cry over if it got lost or broken. I have tried cheap phones before that looked great on the spec sheet and then lagged like crazy, died by 4 p.m., and took potato-quality photos. So when I saw the Redmi A5 boasting a 6.88-inch high refresh rate screen, a 32-megapixel main camera, and that massive 5200 mAh battery, all for around $83, I was skeptical but curious. The emotional stakes were simple. Could this finally be the budget phone I could tell people to buy without constantly adding the phrase, but for the price at the end of every sentence? First, I set it up as my main phone for about a week and a half. SIM card in, all my usual apps: WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok, Gmail, YouTube, a couple of light games. Everyday stuff. Right away, the display surprised me. It is a 6.88-inch HD Plus panel at 1640 by 720, with up to a 120 Hz refresh rate and 240 Hz touch sampling. Scrolling through feeds actually felt smooth. Not fake marketing smooth, but genuinely snappy, especially for basic apps. But then you notice the trade-off. The resolution is only 720p. Text is fine, but if you hold it closer, it is not as sharp as even mid-range phones. Streaming apps are basically capped around that HD level too. Not a deal-breaker at this price, but if you are picky about display sharpness, you will see it. Next, I push the battery. Xiaomi claims 5200 mAh with 15-watt charging. I went heavy. 6 to 7 hours of mixed screen time per day, Wi-Fi and 4G, social media, YouTube, maps, some camera, and light gaming. The result? This thing is a battery tank. I could easily end the day with 25 to 35% left. On lighter days, it stretched into a second day. But here is where it stumbles a bit. 15-watt charging is only decent, and the charger is not included in the box. Using a compatible charger I already had, it took roughly 2 hours to go from around 10% to full. So yes, great endurance, but if you do not already own a decent USB-C charger, add that cost to the price. Then I tested the cameras, because Amazon shouts about a 32-megapixel AI dual camera and upgraded 8-megapixel selfies with fill light. In daylight, the rear camera is honestly impressive for this budget. Shots are detailed enough, colors are a bit boosted but pleasant, and HDR helps keep skies from blowing out. For social media, you are fine, but then you hit low light and night mode. Despite the bigger sensor and fancy night claims, you start seeing the limits of the processor. Images get soft, noise creeps in, and shots can look smeared if you zoom in. It is better than those old 8-megapixel budget cameras, for sure, but it is not magic. Video is capped at 1080p 30 frames per second, no stabilization, so walking footage will be shaky. Performance-wise, The Redmi A5 runs a UNISoC T7250 chipset, 12 nanometer, octa-core up to 1.8 GHz, with Android 15 Go edition on top. In normal use, the Go software actually helps. Opening basic apps is fine, switching between a few apps is okay, and the phone feels usable, not painfully slow. But then you start pushing it. Install heavier apps, open multiple browser tabs, or try 3D games, and you will see stutters, longer loading times, and occasional frame drops. This is a phone built for basic use, not for Genshin Impact marathons. And now, the really important part that a lot of Amazon buyers seem to miss: network compatibility. This specific Redmi A5 listing is for the USA market and is only meant to work on T-Mobile, Mint, Tello, and carriers that use the T-Mobile network. It needs a SIM that is already activated. That means if you are on Verizon, AT&T, or a random regional carrier that does not run on T-Mobile, this phone could basically be a fancy Wi-Fi-only device. Outside the US, any GSM carrier with compatible bands should be fine, but in the States, this is a big catch. Here is where it gets interesting. After about 10 days of real-world use, my biggest surprise was not the performance or even the camera. It was how much value you actually get if you stay within what this phone is designed for. I went in expecting the usual budget phone nonsense: freezing, random app crashes, unusable selfies. Instead, for calls, messaging, social media, YouTube, and ebooks, the Redmi A5 held up better than I thought. The screen, while only HD, feels huge, and the 120Hz refresh makes everything feel more premium. The battery life is legitimately great. The side fingerprint reader and face unlock worked faster than I expected. And getting Android 15 Go with 3 years of security patch promises means it should not be abandoned right away. But you have to compare it realistically. Versus something like a more expensive Samsung A series, you are trading performance, brand support, and sharper displays for a much lower price. Versus older used phones, you are getting a fresh battery and new software, but less raw power in some cases. The Redmi A5 is not too good to be true. It is exactly as good as it can be for around $83, as long as you accept its limits and your carrier is compatible. Now that you know what this phone actually does well and where it cuts corners, the next step is simple. If you are on a T-Mobile style carrier or buying this for use on GSM networks abroad, and you want to lock in that sub-$90 price, check the link in the description for the current best deal before it changes. So who should buy the Redmi A5 and who should skip it? If you want a cheap phone for calls, social media, YouTube, reading, and light photos, especially for kids, parents, or as a backup, and you are on T-Mobile, Mint, or Tello, this is a solid value. If you are on Verizon or AT&T, if you game heavily, or if you are picky about camera quality at night and full HD displays, look elsewhere or save up a bit more. Bottom line, the Xiaomi Redmi A5 is not a miracle phone, but it is a surprisingly competent workhorse for under $100, as long as you play to its strengths instead of believing the hype.